Circa 3100 BCE, a similar yet not identical civilization was established in the second region in Africa, that of the River Nile, Nubia, and Egypt. Its history was not as harmonious as that of the Inlalites, for rivalry and contention continued among Enki's 6 sons, to whom not cities but whole land domains were allocated. Paramount was an ongoing conflict between Enki's firstborn, Marduk, also known as Ra in Egypt, and Ningishzida, Thoth in Egypt, a conflict that led to the exile of both Thoth and a band of African followers to the New World, where he became known as Quetzalcoatl, the winged serpent. And that's where my research has taken me on the rock wall thing. Because that's what it appears that's what it appears this time period in which the rock wall was created was that time period in which Thoth and his band of African followers came to the New World. And when he became known as Quetzalcoatl, the winged serpent. Marduk Ra himself was punished and exiled when opposing the marriage of his young brother Dumuzi to Enlil's granddaughter, Inanna and Ishtar. He caused his brother's death. It was as compensation to Inanna Ishtar that she was granted dominion over the third region of civilization, that of the Indus Valley, circa 2900 BCE. It was for good reason that the 3 civilizations, as was the spaceport in the sacred region, were all centered on the 30th parallel north. According to Sumerian texts, the Anunnaki established kingship, civilization, and its institutions, as most clearly exemplified in Mesopotamia, as a new order in their relationships with mankind, with kings, priests serving both as a link and a separator between gods and men. But as one looks back on that seemingly golden age in the affairs of gods and men, it becomes evident that the affairs of gods constantly dominated and determined the affairs of men and the fate of mankind. Overshadowing all was the determination of Marduk or Ra to undo the injustice done to his father Ea, Enki. When under the succession rules of the Anunnaki, not Enki but Enlil was declared the legal heir of their father Anu, the ruler on their home planet Nibiru. And according with the sexagesimal mathematical system that the gods granted the Sumerians, the 12 great gods of the Sumerian pantheon were given numerical rank, in which Anu held the supreme rank of 60. The rank of 50 was granted to Enlil, that of Enki was 40, and so farther down, alternating between male and female deities. Under the succession rules, Enlil's son Nerta was in line for the rank of 50 on Earth, when Marduk held a nominal rank of 10, and initially these 2 successors in waiting were not yet part of the 12 Olympians. And so the long, bitter, and relentless struggle by Marduk that began with Enlil in Enki feud focused later on Marduk's contention with Enlil's son Ninurta for the succession to the rank of 50, and it extended to Enlil's granddaughter, who was Inanna and also known as Ishtar, whose marriage to Dumuzi, Enki's youngest son, was so opposed by Marduk that it ended with Dumuzi's death. In time, Marduk faced conflicts even with other brothers and half-brothers of his, in addition to the conflict with Thoth that we've already mentioned, principally with Enki's son Nergal, who married a granddaughter of Enlil named Ereshkigal. In the course of these struggles, the conflicts at times flared up to full-fledged wars between the 2 divine clans. Some of these wars are called the Pyramid Wars in my book, The Wars of Gods and Men. In one notable instance, the fighting led to the burying alive of Marduk inside the Great Pyramid. In another, it led to its capture by Ninurta. Marduk was also exiled more than once, both as a punishment and a self-imposed absence. His persistent efforts to attain the status to which he believed he was entitled included the event recorded in the Bible as the Tower of Babel incident. But in the end, after numerous frustrations, success came only when heaven and earth were aligned with the messianic clock. Indeed, the first cataclysmic set of events of the 21st century BCE and the messianic expectations that accompanied it is principally the story of Marduk. It also brought to center stage his son Nabu, a deity, the son of a god, but whose mother was an earthling. Throughout the history of Sumer that spanned almost 2,000 years, its royal capital shifted from the first one, Kish, Ninurta's first city, to Uruk, the city that Anu granted to Inanna and Ishtar, to Sin's seat of sinner and worship, then to others, and then back to the initial ones. Finally, for the third time, back to But at all times in Little City Nippur, his cult center, as scholars won't call it, remained the religious center of Sumer and Sumerian people. It was there that the annual cycle of worshiping the gods was determined. The 12 Olympians of the Sumerian pantheon, each with his or her celestial counterpart among the 12 members of the solar system, the sun, the moon, and 10 planets, including Nibiru, were also honored with 1 month each in the annual cycle of the 12-month year. The Sumerian term for month, Ezin, actually means holiday, festival, and each such month was devoted to celebrating the worship festival of one of the 12 supreme gods. It was the need to determine the exact time when each such month began and ended, not in order to enable peasants to know when to sow or harvest, as schoolbooks explain, that led to the introduction of mankind's first calendar in 3760 BCE. It is known as the calendar of Nippur because it was the task of its priests to determine the calendar intricate timetables to announce for the whole land the time of the religious festivals. The calendar is still in use to this day as the Jewish religious calendar, which in AD 2007 numbers the year. In pre-diluvial times, Nippur served as mission control center. And Lil's command post, where he set up the Duran Key, the bond of heaven and earth for communications with the home planet, Nibiru, and with the spacecraft connecting them. After the deluge, these functions were relocated to a place later known as Jerusalem. Its center position, equidistant from the other functional centers in the Eden, were also deemed to be equidistant from the 4 corners of the earth, and gave it the nickname Navel of the Earth. A hymn to Enlil referred to Nippur and its functions thus as this: Enlil, when you marked off divine settlements on earth, Nippur you set up as your very own city. You founded the Duran Key in the center of the 4 corners of the earth. The term the 4 corners of the earth is also found in the Bible. And when Jerusalem replaced Nippur as mission control center after the deluge, it too was nicknamed the Navel of the Earth. In Sumerian, the term for the 4 regions of the earth was Ub, but it was also found as Anub, the heavenly, the celestial 4 corners. In this case, an astronomical term connected with the calendar. It is taken to refer to the 4 points in the Earth-Sun cycle and the annual cycle that we nowadays call the summer solstice, the winter solstice, and the 2 crossings of the equator, one as the spring equinox and then as the autumnal equinox. In the calendar of Nippur, the year began on the day of the spring equinox, and it has so remained in the ensuing calendars of the ancient Near East. That determined the time of the most important festival of the year, the New Year Festival, an event that lasted 10 days during which detailed and canonized rituals had to be followed. Determining calendrical time by heliacal rising entitled the observation of the skies at dawn, when the sun just begins to rise on the eastern horizon, but the skies are still dark enough to show the stars in the background. The day of the equinox having been determined by the fact that on it, daylight and nighttime were precisely equal. The position of the sun at the heliacal rising was then marked by the erection of a stone pillar to guide future observations, a procedure that was followed, for example, later on at Stonehenge in Britain. And as at Stonehenge, long-term observations revealed that the group of stars or constellations in the background has not remained the same there. The alignment stone called so the background stayed the same. There, the alignment stone called the heel stone that points to a sunrise on solstice nowadays pointed originally to a sunrise circa 2000 BCE. The phenomenon called the precession of the equinoxes, or just precession, results from the fact that as the Earth completes one annual orbit around the sun, it does not return to the same exact celestial spot. There is a slight, very slight retardation. It amounts to 1 degree out of 360 in the circle in 72 years. It was Enki who first grouped the stars observable from Earth into constellations and divided the heavens in which the Earth circled the sun into 12 parts. What has since been called the zodiacal circle of constellations, since each 12th part of the circle occupied 30 degrees of the celestial arc. The retardation or precessional shift from one zodiacal house to another lasted mathematically 2,160 years, 72 times 30. And a complete zodiacal cycle lasted 25,920 years, 2,160 times 12. The approximate dates of the zodiacal ages following the equal 12-part division and not actual astronomical observations have been added here for the reader's guidance. Guana, the heavenly bull, Taurus; Mashtaba, the twins, or Gemini; Dub, the pincers, the tongues, is the crab of Cancer; Urgula, the lion, which we call Leo; Absin, her father was Sin, the maiden, Virgo; Zebaana, the heavenly fate, the scales of Libra; Gertab, which claws and cuts, the Scorpio; Pabil, the defender, the archer, Sagittarius; Shirmash, the goatfish, Capricorn; Gu, the lord of the waters, the water bear, Aquarius; Sima, fishes, Pisces; Kumal, the field dweller, the ram, Aries. That this was the achievement from a time preceding mankind's civilizations is attested by the fact that a zodiacal calendar was applied to Enki's first stays on Earth, when the first 2 zodiacal houses were named in his honor. That this was not the achievement of a Greek astronomer in the 3rd century BCE, as most textbooks will suggest, is attested by the fact that the 12 zodiacal houses were known to the Sumerians millennia earlier by names and depictions that we use to this day. In When Time Began, the calendrical timetables of gods and men were discussed at length, having come from Nibiru, whose orbital period, the Sar, the Shar, meant 3,600 Earth years. That unit was naturally the first calendrical yardstick of the Anunnaki, even on the fast-orbiting Earth. Indeed, the texts dealing with their early days on Earth, such as the Sumerian king lists, designated the periods of this or that leader's time on Earth in terms of shars. I termed this divine time. The calendar granted in mankind, one based on the orbital aspects of the Earth and its moon, was named earthly time, pointing out that the 2,160-year zodiacal shift, less than a year for the Anunnaki, offered them a better ratio, the golden ratio of 10:6 between the 2 extremes. I called this celestial time. As Marduk discovered, that celestial time was the clock by which his destiny was to be determined, but which was mankind's messianic clock, determining its fate and destiny, earthly time, such as the count of 50-year jubilees, a count in centuries, or the millennium. Was it divine time geared to Nibiru's orbit, or is it celestial time that follows slow rotation of the zodiacal clock? The quandary, as we shall see, baffled mankind in antiquity. It still lies at the core of the current return issue. The question that is posed has been asked before by Babylonian and Assyrian stargazing priests, by biblical prophets in the book of Daniel, in Revelation of St. John the Divine, by the likes of Sir Isaac Newton, by all of us today. The answer will be astounding, but let us embark on the painstaking quest. And that's the end of chapter 1. Let me get a drink here. And we're going to get into a little chapter 2 for you here now. And it came to pass, the end of days, by Zecharia Sitchin. It is highly significant that in its record of Sumer and the early Sumerian civilization, The Bible chose to highlight the space connection incident, the one known as the tale of the Tower of Babel. And it came to pass as they journeyed from the east that they found a plain in the land of Shanir, and they settled there. And they said to one another, "Come, let us make bricks and burn them by the fire." And the bricks served them as stone, and the bitumen served them as mortar. And they said, "Come, let us build a city and a tower whose head shall reach the heavens." Genesis 11:2-4. This is how the Bible recorded the most audacious attempt by Marduk to assert his supremacy and by establishing his own city in the heart of Indolite domains, and moreover, to build there his own space facility with its own launch tower. The place is named